welcome to another episode of the Hector Mike Experience, Common Sense in an Uncommon World. And man, we've been off for a while. I was out in my honeymoon. Just got married not a couple weeks ago, and so spent some time over in Costa Rica with Amy.
Nice.
Obviously, great time. It was just what a wonderful place and people and stuff. And so it was just fun time. But it's great to be back here.
You didn't miss
And
anything.
Mike, I thought you were going to hold down the fort and calm down all the craziness that's going on, but it just seemed like it just got more bananas.
The fort has left the building and it's on fire. No, man. I
Man,
mean, you go away and it all goes to hell in a handbasket. That's
man,
what
but
happens.
you know what? But it gives us a lot of topics to talk about. I mean, today we're gonna go touch on a couple of different subjects. Wanted to talk about the this conference of the parties 28, which is basically it's called COP 28. It's this conference of parties, which is like 200 nations from around the world coming together. It's a 28th meeting that they've had, so that's why they call it COP 28. It's happening in Dubai, and basically what they're there to do
Because
is
Jersey
to
was booked.
yes, Jersey was booked, but they're there to
So
just
going
kind
to
of go
Dubai.
out and try to one up each other as to how they're going to deal with climate change. What are the policies they're going to try to they're coming up with some sort of plans, and so you've got Joe Biden's administration that released new methane rules there for gas and oil companies, and so it really I mean it's just it's a party of Al Gore and John Kerry and all those likes that are there, flying around in the private jets, going into this
Hmm.
conference to tell the world how they should use with less while they're hanging out in their mansions, spending and utilizing as much electricity and everything else, and gas and oil and everything else that we're not supposed to be using. And so it's just it's the elite telling everyone else don't do it.
That's exactly what it is. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah,
It's exactly
and
what it
it's
is.
and the crazy part is they're going in there and they're putting this together, this plan, and it's supposed to basically be, we're going to get rid of fossil fuels by 2050. I think it's 2040 or
2050.
2050. um, and so there, it's like all these nations are supposed to agree to it, but there is really nothing binding to it. But the problem is that you're going to have the United States, you're going to have all these other countries spend all this money to try to reach these goals, but they all come with a cost,
Hmm.
and they come with a big cost. And yet you have some of the largest emitters of CO2 that are going the opposite way.
Right.
And
And all it's doing is giving them more power, literally and figuratively.
right, more power and higher cost to us, or higher cost to to the folks out there. And one example is this year, NPR did a report that you got China that is putting together 100 brand new coal power plants in order to provide stability to their electricity. Yeah, and so yet you got here in California, about a year ago, you had Gavin Newsom telling people, if you got an electric vehicle, don't charge it because we want you to keep the
Right.
lights on because we potentially have blackouts.
Right.
And so they're out there. I mean, granted, and I understand coal is one of the dirtiest things that you can burn it, for it, that's contaminated to the air. But I mean, a lot of these other countries are trying to get off of coal and go into gas and natural gas and oil.
It's it's the hypocrisy conference is what it is, because first of all they fly in on the private jets, and I said facetiously Jersey was booked, but they go to all these great world capitals to do this, and you know you wonder how much energy and power and emissions and were done in the places that they go, because they're not going to Motel 6 to do it. They're going in all these, amazing buildings. They all ride around in their armored limousines, and they fly in on their private jets. And you and I that go to the gas station here in California and pay $5 a gallon, they're preaching to us about how we should get off the spigot of gasoline and fossil fuels. I think here's a good example of the stupidity of this whole thing. This is part of what they agreed to. They say they want to agree to a transition that, quote, away from fossil fuels and energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, accelerating action in this critical decade so as to achieve net zero in keeping with the science. To which John Kerry called a clear, unambiguous message. So I think, maybe he's too many fumes are going into the private plane that he flew over to Dubai. I'm not sure. But,
What the hell does that mean?
exactly. That's a
What the hell
clear,
does that mean?
unambiguous message. I mean, again, that's a clear, ambiguous message. I mean, what does it actually mean? Who does it actually apply to? How does it actually fix anything? We again, we run around, we do all these things here in California. We pay $5 a gallon extra because we have blended gasoline that is supposed to be better for the environment. Even though we don't make it here in the United States, we have to import it from other countries that are our enemies, that are burning down or tearing down the Brazilian rainforest to make these fossil fuels that then come to the United States on, tankers that burn diesel. But it's all designed to make our air better to breathe here in California. And Los Angeles and San Francisco for the last decade has been had the worst air in the country. Um,
I
it's
think
all wonderful if it actually achieves something. None of this stuff achieves anything except for elites that fly to Dubai, that go on private planes, that stay in five-star plus hotels, telling schmoes like you and me and everybody else, you got to get off you got to get off the gas tank and you got to plug it in. Even though, and you find the article, there are tens and tens of millions of dollars the federal government had put into their infrastructure act that is supposed to build the electric charging stations that have not happened because they don't have the manufacturing equipment to get it done in the time that they need to get it done. So that money that was allocated is sitting doing nothing. That's the ridiculousness of all of this.
and you're right, Mike. I think one of the things that is important to make clear is when you take a place like California, we used to produce about 50 to 60% of our own oil here domestically. And as you know, in California, we have the highest rules, highest standards, highest
Mm-hmm.
everything in the world.
Which is
And
high.
yes, and what has happened is now, because of this governor and in previous administrations, is we now only produce about 20 to 25% of our domestic oil. So we're having to go to the Middle East. We're having to go to Venezuela. We're going to Iraq. We're going to all these other countries and Ecuador to go and ask them to import their oil. Well, when you're bringing it in from the Middle East, I mean, you got a tanker that's going across the globe, and it's taking a couple of weeks to get over to here. Then at the same time, they go into our ports. It gets taken off that ship. It gets put into a truck, and then it gets taken over to the refinery. And so all that comes with the cost, and it's not just a cost of the price, but it's a cost to a lot of these folks of climate. And so why don't we produce it here as opposed to importing it? At the same time, is if you're going to start getting us into some sort of binding documents or so forth, as to what we're going to do and spend more money, what is the cost of all these things? How much more is it going to increase the cost of gasoline? And look, I get it. We're going to, and I'm good with this, into a transition where we're going to look at battery development, where when the sun, is out there shining, it's charging up the battery. We can utilize this battery to power up our home, but we're not there yet. And so
Right.
don't get rid of what we've got until the technology's there. But you've got all these knuckleheads that are out there saying, don't worry about it. They'll figure it out. We'll get to the point. Let's just get rid of it now because someone will come up and figure it out. By doing all that, it comes with a great cost because what you're doing is you're getting rid of refineries, you're getting rid of your domestic oil production when you don't have that other alternative that is
Alternative.
operational or working right now.
But let's, and I'm an America First guy. So you're right. Everything you just said applies to people like you and me and others that have to go to the gas station, once every week or every couple of weeks to fill up. And we see the price going up and up. We don't get any benefit for that. Our air isn't any cleaner. But let's go past us. You go to the poor countries in this world. the countries that are barely have the electricity or the power, either the generation or the distribution to be able to have that. The things that they need to get clean water and build an infrastructure and things like that. Now you go to them and you say, you got to follow these rules
Mhm.
that are going to make it even more difficult. They're just starting to get to the point where they have these resources. They're just able to get to the point where they're able to utilize and harness this stuff. Now you're saying to them, okay, we just changed the rules of the game. You finally got there after I don't know how many decades, but we just changed the rules of the game, and now you got to do this. The thing about us, America, is that if the government would get out of the way, we probably could figure, if you leave it to the private sector, you could probably get people who are smart enough to figure a way to get some of this stuff done in a reasonable period of time. But as we know with things like the high speed rail and the trains to nowhere, once you get government involved, forget about it. It ain't going to happen. But the potential is there. In some of these other places where they literally have had nothing and now have a very little something, it's being taken away from them. And again, it's these guys are getting in their private jet, with the champagne and the nice hotels and the fancy suits and the big limousines, and basically they're thumbing their nose, not just at us, but especially at those other places, those poor countries that don't have even the hope of an alternative because they've just gotten to where they've got some kind of power that they can have a decent life, and that's a sin. That's a
Yeah, and
sin.
you're right. There's an article that I read where the sub African countries have said, you know what, you're going to change the rules on us. Tell you what, why don't you get rid of fossil fuels first, and we'll be the last ones. They said
Right,
because and they're saying because we don't even have electricity reliability.
right.
They don't have enough. They don't have the power or the ability by which to provide electricity on a regular basis to the people who live in those countries.
It's
And so,
California in the summer.
California in the summer, yeah. And so that I mean, so their thing is, screw you. We're
Mm-hmm.
not getting involved in
Right.
this whole thing. Yeah,
Right. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's exactly what you said. The groups that are the biggest polluters are not part of this. So you have all of these other ancillary, you know, countries, but the China, the Russias, they're not part of this. North Korea, they're not part of this. They run by their own rules, their own systems, and what's best for their people. And they don't care about the world environment. Now, I think it's great we care about the world environment. That's wonderful. But, you got to be realistic about this. And the realistic part of it is if you're looking for a solution to climate change and you don't have included the biggest polluters that are creating the climate situation, what are you doing? I mean, other than going to Dubai for 5 days and having a great time, what are you doing?
spending taxpayer money because that's all it is. It's like like I said, all these plans come with the price tag, and at the end of the day, it's taxpayer money. I mean, we're the ones. It's us. We're the ones who are gonna have to pay for all these aspirational goals. We're gonna have to pay for
Yeah.
all of their, you know, hoity-toity ideas that they decide to come up with there with a bunch of people. Maybe the next conference, maybe COP 29 should be in some of these sub-African countries that don't have electricity reliability, and and go to there, have it intense, and figure out, okay, we're going to try to take something away that they don't even
Right.
have right now,
It's a great idea.
yeah, or have it in some places, in California where we're having problems, and not necessarily electricity reliability, but places where you got a million people in California who don't even have access to clean drinking water. You know,
I
having
well, I think they should have it in San Francisco, or actually no, they should have it in L.A. because then we could get rid of the homeless problem. So we kill two birds with one stone. It's like all these countries are coming over. They're coming to L.A. So suddenly they'll figure a way to figure the money and the way to get rid of the homeless things, like they
yeah,
did with San Francisco with the president of China. So that might not be a bad. But you're right. I mean, go walk in another person's shoes before you get on your fancy jet, your fancy hotel in this beautiful country, in your fancy limousine. Walk in someone else's shoes that is trying to barely survive
yeah.
and then live under the policies you're trying to implement or impose on them. Won't be fun. Won't be fun.
It won't, and for a lot of folks here in the United States in California, where we're at, you got to remember that every single time that price of gasoline goes up, it doesn't just impact the gas that you put in your vehicle, but it impacts everything else because remember those Amazon packages you order, they're being delivered with it with the vehicle which utilizes gas or diesel. At the same time, those food prices you're paying, they've got those lots of fruits and vegetables are coming off the docks, coming into our ports, coming into like in Los Angeles downtown where they put all those downtown markets. Then from there, once again, they're being transported by a vehicle. Then from there, they have to get over to the supermarkets.
Right.
That once again is being transported with the vehicle that utilizes gas. And so even the lumber that you utilize that goes into Home Depot or wherever you get your tools or material, that's being taken over by a vehicle. And so there all those little costs is just adding to the price and adding to the price and making it more expensive. And so, we get nickel and dimed out of this thing. And especially when you got these politicians that want to get rid of something that is reliable for us right now, that can be inexpensive, but yet by giving us less choices, we're making it more expensive. And it comes with the cost when you have all these other countries that are expanding their resources, unlike us that is contracting our resources.
Well, I'm very excited to see once we shift completely to electric like we're doing in California. I'm very curious to see the electric tires that will be used to drive the cars and the electric bodies of the automobiles that will be made of electric so that, when you hit somebody, you just get an electric shock and you don't create damage. Because last time I checked, and I will admit publicly here that I did get an F in chemistry when I was in college, um, things like tires and things like that, and the bodies of automobiles, uh,
Asphalt, yeah.
yeah, asphalt, the roads you drive on, the guardrails, they're all made with fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So I guess, again, there's going to be, I'm, the extension. Do you have an extension cord on your tire that extends out or plugs into the car that generates the tire because you won't have the fossil fuel to make the tire? Or maybe it's made out of bamboo. I don't know. I mean, but I'm sure that at COP 29 or 30 or maybe even 33, they'll figure that part out. Because, when you live in a fantasy world, anything's possible. That's really what this thing is. It's a fantasy world that they're living in. They can do everything they want to make everybody drive an electric car, but you still need the fossil fuels to make the tires, the engine, the whole 5 yards. And it's just, And by the way, I saw a great picture the other day. It had a picture of a forest and a walking path where there was drilling going on, and you could not tell there was drilling going on because of the technology that's used and all of the scientific things that are done to help, minimize impact on the environment and stuff. And then they showed this huge quarry quartz thing where they used to dig up the lithium to make the batteries for the automobiles. And it's basically something the size of a mountain that's been imploded, and it's an eyesore like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And that's what, but we're feeling good because we can say we're moving to electric cars. I mean, it is. It's a fantasy world that these people live in, and we pay the price for it, like you said.
Well, Mike, changing a little bit